What is up, everyone? We are back with another episode of Shaping the Culture. Let's just get to it. The whole secular sacred divide. There is no distinction in the scriptures. Some of us have trust issues with God, and some of us, it's like, does God really got us? You can't engage the culture with the gospel that first has not engaged you. Like, you know how people are like, oh, that's just who I am. Nah.
Keep. Drop the mic. Drop the mic.
Shaping the code.
Talking like they know me, they don't know the half. I'm like Owen Hart, mixed inside a Noah's Ark. I had battles in the dark, why you so alarmed? See the battles and the scars, had to go to class. Tamagotchi in my pocket, why you holding off?
What is up, everyone? We are back with another episode of Shaping the Culture. And today we've got a special guest with us. There's so much I can say about this man. He is a science whiz. He is your favorite artist. Okay. He is content creator.
I feel like the guest pastor just sitting in the chair and waiting as he gets all his accolades.
Man, listen, a performer. What else can I say? A conversationalist. I want to say something about the way you make coffee, bro, because it's so poetic and it's so...
Coffee is a beautiful thing, man.
It is, man. If you ever need a cup of coffee, Joe's your man.
Indeed, I am.
We got a thinker with us. I'm excited. He's been on before. Glad to have him back again. We got none other than Joe Solomon with us.
What up, man?
What's good, bro? How you doing?
I'm good, man. Glad to be doing this, man. Shout out to you. I think, man, you have a gift, man, to make people feel at ease and home, and you're very inquisitive, and man, I know I feel that from you, so I'm pretty sure the people that know you in person probably feel that a million times more, and I hope people say that about you enough. So,
man, I appreciate that.
Excited to do this. I don't think I've done a interview with anybody about. I guess
this is an exclusive.
No, I haven't. I haven't been interested. So,
and for the listeners tuning in, this podcast episode is not going to be a whole bunch of gotcha moments. I just kind of want to lay out the vibe for the conversation. Over the last year, you and I have had a few conversations off camera about your transition, and I'm just curious. And I know as a fan, because I've been following you for a very long time, I've benefited a great deal just having honest conversation, just trying to seek to understand what it is that you're thinking, feeling, going through, how you make some of the decisions you make. And so I hope this conversation is just that honest, open, transparent conversation. I'm not trying to convert you back to Christianity. I'm not trying to get you in a catch-22 and have all of your arguments just kind of fall into pieces or what have you. I just genuinely want to know your heart, get a feel for where you're at, and maybe the listener after this conversation will have some of that as well. And but I appreciate you for coming on. I know this is one of the first that you've done, so I don't take that lightly. And grateful for your presence. I had a great time the first time, and I'm excited for this conversation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Same, man. Same.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's kind of jump into this. I remember...
It gets kind of loud out here sometimes. I might close the door after if it gets... Because it's like... it's 3:45, so school's
Traffic,
letting out. That could be.
That's real. It's all good. We'll make it work with what we got.
I like the ambient noise or whatever, but it might be too much. We'll see. But go ahead, man.
We'll make it work. Yeah. We had to have the plants and the light. It's Joe Solomon comes on. This is on brand.
It's the brand, bro. It's
you
the
gotta
brand,
stay on
man.
brand.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, so the day that you announced that you left the faith,
August 21st, 2021.
I remember that day vividly. Perry's Name Church, the church I pastor, we meet 5 p.m. And it was maybe an hour, maybe a half hour before our service started. I was sitting down and I just go on Twitter, and then I see the announcement.
Yeah.
And I was like, is this real? My heart sunk. And I didn't realize how, and I know you and I have talked about a lot of people feeling the same way, how emotional that post was going to be for me, or how much I was going to feel it. You know, just I've benefited a great deal from the content that you put out, the ministry that you had when you were a believer. And so I just remember feeling like, yo, this is wild. Anyways, long story short, got off the phone, did the service, got off, and then you did an Instagram live that night, I believe.
Yeah.
And I had to hop in, and I was just heartbroken by the comment section and the things that people were saying. And so I guess my first question is, take us back to August 21st.
Yeah, or the 22nd. I think it was 21 or 22. It was one of those dates, and I knew it was 20-something in August 21.
Yeah. Where was your headspace at when you made that post? And what are the emotions that you felt right after? Because I know you were getting blown up and a lot was happening.
You know, so I had kind of made that transition privately and personally in my own heart months before that. Yeah. And I had began telling my friends and my family already. And I knew that people could see the change publicly in some way. Some people were, you know, gently pushing back. Some people were weird. Some people found my home address and was sending me like ominous letters and stuff. That was weird. Yeah. But when I made the post, I handled it. I didn't handle it well. I think that I had been so removed from I had went through the turmoil and the frustration and the hurt and the pain in private already. I had already went through it, and I went through it and came out the other side, you know, feeling whole, or at least more whole and more confident and certain of where I was. And so by the time I knew I had to make the announcement to the world, I almost didn't want to. I was like, man, I'll just let people figure it out. Yeah. But I felt like it was a disservice to myself and a disservice to people who were, you know, they signed up to watch me, they subscribed to me or whatever for a particular reason. Yeah. And, you know, as far as they're concerned, I'm a Christian who claims to hold up Christian standards. So if I'm doing something that's not based within Christian standards, they feel the right to say something to challenge that because they don't know that I'm not a Christian. Right. And so it felt a bit dualistic. You know, I was still getting booking requests for churches and stuff like that, and I was just like, you know. And then I actually had a non-Christian friend who challenged me to make it public, and she had good reason to. And her reason became more clear after I posted it. And I'll tell you why it became more clear. Because when I posted it, I was just kind of over it. Yeah. Emotionally, like I said, I already been through it. And so I was really haphazard and just kind of like, oh yeah, by the way, y'all, not Christian, whatever. And don't ask me no questions. Don't pop up. If you wasn't talking to me before this, I'm not going into it. I'm not going to give you no whys. I'm just not a Christian. Yeah. And, you know, it was my non-Christian friend who told me that, you know, you missed an opportunity to show people an example of someone who walks away from that space certain and whole and not hurt. Because many times what people expect, and people still expect this from me, because I see it in comments all the time, they assume that I leave because of church hurt or because of some sort of like egregious sin. You know, it's always like some pastor fell out with it, you know, he cheated on his wife, and then there was like this weird like route that he went down, or someone leaves because they're just hurt, or they leave because of you know, it's the white man's religion, or they leave because of a lot of frustration with the church. And I do have frustration with the church, but I don't think that makes me unique. I think Christians have frustration with the church. Like everyone has frustrations with the church. So and I think my frustrations are not unique to me because I left. Their frustrations are there because I was so a part of it. I think, you know, if I meet one of your family members and they do something, you know, that I think is kind of awkward, I may have like a small frustration with them, but your frustrations with them are probably way more significant than mine.
Yeah.
But your love is so more significant for them too. But it's because you spent so much time with them that you're actually much more acquainted with, you know, the nuances of the, you know. So I'm definitely acquainted with the of problems within the church, but that's not why I left. I talk about it on my YouTube channel about, you know, I mean, the real general answer is just, you know, intellectually and even existentially, like, it just was too much tension to hold as far as the dots connecting. I'm not going to go too much because I have videos and videos about it, but I mean, essentially there was no hurt involved, at least not primarily. That's not the reason why. There's still people I love. I still get down with a lot of Christians. And so I wanted to, I came back with the podcast episode to try to clean up what I did, because I did want to offer to, for one, Christians who are, or former Christians who had left, or Christians who were on the fence, who didn't know what a healthy transition could look like. And I know the word healthy is relative depending on what side of the fence you're on about this. Nothing about what I'm doing is healthy to some people. But what healthy transition looks like, or at least attempting to be healthy in the transition, and showing an avenue of like, hey, you know, you don't have to be all broken and messed up. You don't have to be mad at everybody. I'm not going to go on some rant of trying to out all these, you know, while I'm at it, you know, this pastor did this and then this, and trying to take everybody down with me. It's like, nah, I don't have to do that. And I want to show people an example of that. And so I think I might have missed, she told me, she's like, I think you might have missed an opportunity to leave that door open for conversation. And so I try to clean it up. But, you know, emotionally at that time, I was over it, you know, in a good way. I was kind of over it. So I think people who have been, I underestimated, and like you know, it's good that you brought it up. I underestimated people like you, who I just didn't think, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know why I didn't think people would really care. I just didn't think people would be that concerned with it. And I could only think in a dichotomy. On one side, people who would be happy for me, and people who would be just flat out judgmental, upset with me. And I really didn't consider people who were in the middle, who were, you know, still had love for me and was really, you know, they grew a lot in their faith because of me. And now they're, you know, they genuinely had questions, and they were a little left confused and a little hurt, and maybe in some ways discarded in the way that I approached it. How frivolously I, you know, handled that. And I began to feel that too, of like, I still don't think I owe anybody anything. I just don't think that language is appropriate for it. But I'm learning more and more how to appreciate, on any spectrum, whether it be family, friends, or supporters who have been around for a long time. Like, in this life, man, gotta appreciate people, man. And, you know, especially people who have really rocked with you for a while. And I don't think the way that I handled that, I think I was so in my own world that I didn't really consider appreciating people who, you know, wouldn't hate me, but still be affected by this. Like, this is a significant thing for them. And again, I don't owe them anything, but just out of love and appreciation to people, I don't think I handled it well. So I tried to clean it up after the fact.
Yeah, and I feel like you've been doing that. You started a whole new YouTube page, kind of welcoming us in, inviting us into some of your thought processes, and maybe some of the reasons why you made the decision that you did make. How has that been for you? Has that been therapeutic for you? I'll tell you this, you reacting to your poem,
Oh yeah.
that was emotional for me to see. And I could tell there was emotion on your part as well.
Yeah.
But how has that been now that you're trying to clean things up, you're trying to invite people? And what I've told you this before, what I love about that YouTube page is you're not combative. You're not trying to, drag Christianity through the mud. You're just being honest and transparent about your wrestles and the inconsistencies that you found in the faith and how you just couldn't make amends with that. But what's that been like for you now revisit? I know this is maybe a year or two after you've made it public, but in an attempt to clean things up, what's that process look like and felt like for you?
It's been great in some ways. Like, again, being so over it, I kind of even like stopped even like thinking in terms of like trying to wrestle through, well, I won't say completely, but at least not publicly, wrestling through my Christian background and trying to reconcile that with where I'm at now today. And so I just didn't really have any real interest in it at first. And so to do it, sometimes I still lose interest in it. Yeah. But some of it has been therapeutic as you try to reconcile the banking account, like there's been a lot of spending there's a lot of money going out, a lot of money going in, and now you got to balance the books. And so, you got to kind of account for where everything is at. And I think you just living so much life, and it's just good sometimes to just sit down and be like, okay, what's been going out? What's been coming in? Yeah. Why was that going out? Why was that coming in? Why was that spent? Why was that, And so when I mean that by like, all the things all the Christian ways of thinking that have shaped me and made me who I am, and colors the way that I look at the world. And now I'm like bringing in all these other different ways of looking at the world. I can't ignore the fact that so much of my life was shaped by Christian thinking, that now I'm trying to like revisit. Why do I think that way about life, relationships, or money, or ambition, my creativity? Right. And then, so now I'm kind of going back. It's helping me to go back and reassess, if something is still good to hold, kind of take an inventory. And I think there are a lot of things about my Christian background that I still hold. Like, I don't reject all the language of Christianity, and I think there's still so much good that I've learned from Christianity that I find myself sort of revisiting now. I think I threw the baby out with the bathwater for a minute. And so now I'm like trying to revisit some classic Christian understanding and then seeing how that can apply to my life now. Because I think of it like, I was explaining the other day to somebody how I don't want to reject all Christian language and the concepts that come with it. I see Christianity now as like a box of Cheerios, where, if I want to buy Cheerios and they come from a manufacturer or some plant or whatever, like they don't just bring the Cheerios to me. They put it in a box. The box is there to help transport it to me. But I don't buy a box of Cheerios for the box of Cheerios. I buy a box of Cheerios for the Cheerios. Gotcha. And the container is what's necessary to get it to me. And I think that there's a lot of things that are nutritional about the Christian faith that came in the container of Christianity that I still want to use, and I don't want to get too caught up on the container. And so I think that, in another sense, like we were taught English, the way that we explain and speak about the world around us is English, but English was given to us by our oppressors. You know what I'm saying? It was given to us by our oppressors. And yet, as we combat oppression and we combat colonialist, capitalist anti-black thinking,
Yeah.
we do it with the oppressor's language.
Right.
It's the language we know, and it's the language we've come familiar with, and we can most effectively do it because we speak it so well.
Yeah.
So I don't try to go and learn some native African language so that I can combat oppression.
Right.
Like, this is the language I was born with. And I do it most efficiently with this language. Right. This is the language I'm going to use to deal with the space that I'm in. And so I think of it the same way with, Christianity. Christianity is very much the first language I know about life. Language like resurrection and death and grace and self-control and language like redemption and these very, very Christian words and ways of thinking about life. This was a language I was given, and I don't necessarily have to trash the language in order to deal with the life that's around me. In the way that I'm native in English, as far as a native English speaker, Christianity is my first language about life and about morality and about love and family and self-control and all those things. And so I've mastered that pretty well. And so I can, use that, and I can learn other languages too. But, the foundation for me has been Christianity, and I'm okay with using the language to try to make it through life with it. So that's kind of where I'm at right now as we speak.
Yeah, no, that's real. As we're talking, I can already hear people being like, oh, does he feel like Christianity is an oppressive religion? Is that, making that connect? I know you're just using it as an analogy, but maybe
if you want my honest opinion, I think it's oppressive in some ways, but I don't think it's like the oppressor's religion. It's not the oppressor's religion. I'm not, some people, I've even had that going around. Oh, he left because he thinks that it's the white man. Where y'all getting this from? I never thought that Christianity was a white man's religion. I know the origin of Christianity. I know that it made it to Ethiopia far before it got to the white man. Yeah. It's been a black and brown religion long before, or at least even concurrently as far as we're going to Romans and stuff like that. So I understand. Yeah. But I also understand I don't have no issue with that. But I do think it's oppressive in a more broader sense. It is liberating in some ways. Yeah. I think that, again, because the language of Christianity is, it's liberating to have language to think through life like that. But, it's oppressive. I was talking about on my channel the other day. I think there's some ways, one of the ways that I think that
with the body, right?
With the body, and particularly Paul's ethic of the body. I know some people were like, well, when Paul says flesh and body, he's not saying the same. There's flesh as flesh desires and then body. Right. I'm like, well, but fleshly desires come from the body. Yeah. Where does lust come from? But from hormones. Yeah. So to damn fleshly desires is in some way to damn the body, and I don't think that's an unfair, characterization of the Bible. I think the Bible very much pits the spiritual and the physical against each other. It sees it as good too originally, but ultimately it was cursed by sin. Yeah. The world around us, the weeds that grow, in the gardens and stuff, that is an effect of the curse on nature. The snake being cursed down to the ground is effect. The childbirth of Eve now having pain. All these things.
Toil while you work.
There's a dichotomy. There's a dichotomy of of flesh, and think of the things that are above, not things that are below. Don't think of the flesh, and kill the flesh, deny the flesh. The flesh wages war against your soul. There's very combative language around the body, and I think that I've kind of come to the conclusion that whether my body or my body's desires, I don't approach them now as something to combat, but something to control, and something to call into submission and to focus its desires and to deny some of its desires. I think denying and killing are both languages that the Bible uses, but still very different. You know, like I was like, I'm not at war with my body. I don't want to see it that way anymore. I'm not at war with my fleshly desires. I'm in a pursuit of harmony between my desires and what my body does, what my mind desires, what my body desires. So
that's real. Just out of curiosity, what would you say would be the difference between waging war with the body and denying, your flesh? I guess in my mind, even though the Bible does speak on both, I've always interpreted it as it being the same thing.
So it is in practice. It is the same thing. To deny yourself, to kill your flesh, is simply to say, don't watch porn.
Yeah.
So in a practical sense, to kill your flesh, or deny your flesh, is in a practical sense the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, don't watch porn.
Yeah.
But it's the disposition towards the body that's different. The way that you see the body, it's not a despising of it. So like when you want to watch porn and you're seeing it, it's not just a denying, but also you're in a combat, in a war. You hate the enemy. Your body becomes the enemy.
Right.
And now there's a war between the two of you. And so when you do watch porn, or when you have these, sexual desires that that are out of line with the Bible, when you do things that are against us, now there's a guilt and there's a shame, there's a despising of the body, a frustration, a cry. I don't want to keep doing this, and I don't even think that that's the most, for me, it hasn't proven to be the most effective thing to get out of sin. And I think that even Christians would say that it's dualistic, because on one side they would say deny, kill, but also there was like, you work from the victory of Christ, not for the victory of Christ. Right. You work out of an outflow of grace, and not for the pursuit of grace. It's been given to you, not earned. And so it's dualistic. So on one side, I think it's both. The Bible presents both. I just don't think the other one is necessary or very efficient. I don't want to operate on a spectrum of guilt and shame. But on a spectrum only of joy and fulfillment. I know that the Christian has an ethic of joy and fulfillment as well. Like, this is more fulfilling to you to do it this way. To follow God's will is life. Yeah. This is the abundant life, is to walk in the will of God. Yeah. So that ethic is there, but I just don't need. I think the other ethic, to bring it all full circle, is a bit oppressive way of thinking of trying to call my body into submission.
For
it's
sure.
a dark place.
What's crazy is, as you're talking, I'm like, I agree.
All right, now listen. I'm not here trying to convert nobody, man.
Because in one sense, I don't feel like guilt and shame is something that we're supposed to champion that as a Christian. I think there's a difference between conviction and shame, or conviction and guilt. And I don't think, we're called to respond to our mishaps in such a way that we condemn ourselves, or that we beat ourselves up, especially because if we're coming from the overflow of the victory that we have
even
in
Paul
Christ.
says, he says, there is now no condemnation for those of us who are in Christ. So there's, that's there too. I guess, so I don't want to paint the picture. People say, he's only seen it one side for his own agendas. Like, both of them is there. I just think one is not necessary.
Yeah, I feel you. This kind of reminds me of what we were talking about off air. In our conversation in the last podcast episode we did, you brought up the idea of traveling light. Yeah. And, because, what's crazy is, if people have been following you for a while, they would know that, you've been honest about your doubts. You've been honest about your wrestles. And so you being on this side of the conversation, it's like, man, you were legitimately trying to make sense of the faith, legitimately trying to receive this thing wholeheartedly and follow it with everything that you got. And, one of the tools that you were using to stay in the fight the fight for the faith, I should say, is to travel light. And I can't help but, as we're talking about this, think about can that tool be used because like I said, when I hear you talk, there's sometimes where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm with Joe on that. Like I actually don't disagree with that. Can this be a matter where we travel light on, or what does that look like for you? Or do you in your approach, do we have to throw the baby out with the bathwater if there is overlap, and we can acknowledge that Paul speaks to there's no condemnation, that the gospel is for our freedom, it is for fulfillment, it's for our joy, and that some of the things that may seem oppressive, they don't necessarily have to be the means in which we live this life by.
Yeah. Well, I'm still on that whole like travel light, trying to get rid of stuff that's not necessary. I don't know if this is on topic, but it is on topic, but I might be staring at it a different way as far as like, how can I approach this? One of the things I had to wrestle with, as a Christian, and then when I started making this language, my walk away was, and maybe this is to the vindication of some people's opinions of me. My transition out of Christian faith wasn't overnight. I was slowly letting things go, not in an attempt to let go of my Christianity, but to hold on, because it was frustrating me. People think, see, it's a slow drift, and people categorize the slow drift as something that is all bad, has bad intentions, or maybe I was just being deceived by the devil. But really, what do I need? Do I need salvation from Jesus? Okay, what do I need to keep in order to hold on to all of that? And so, one of the things I was wrestling with at the time was the inerrancy and infallibility of the scriptures. And I'm like, okay, it makes it a little more gray if you let go of that. But I was like, a lot of this stuff is not really adding up to me in the way that, in the way that Paul interprets Jesus, and I've seen the discontinuity between Paul and Jesus. And there's a lot of theologians. I mean, people probably just tell me I'm thinking about it wrong, but I'm like, man, you've got to be, just a cursory view of it seems like a lot of discontinuity. But if you're a seminarian, then it all kind of, you can do some gymnastics to make it work. But I was like, man, I was becoming one of those dreaded red letter Christians, where it was like, man, if it's in red, then we cool, but everything else is up for grabs, because I was trying to just hold on to Jesus. I was like that was the last thing to go, was Jesus. I was starting to let go of even the prophets, and even some of the miracles before, the flood and all that, and but particularly, Paul's one of the guys that I had a issue with as well. And one thing is a sidebar, that I was having a conversation with somebody on Twitter, I think it was, and it's especially around this conversation. I always have a question about this for Christians who want to be pro LGBTQ while still being pro infallibility, inerrancy. I was like, and for the record, not obviously, but where I'm at now, I'm like, love who you want to love. It's not my business. I think love is a very hard thing to find, and everyone, I think the way that the church oftentimes simplifies, and my friend Will really challenged me on this too, how we simplify people's identities down to their sexual desires, and it's not always them that do it. It's society around them that distills them down to who they sleep with, versus like that also entails their desires to have families and to be loved and to be cared for and to just exist happily in society. Man, who doesn't? Man, I have been, the struggle for me to exist that way for myself has been so hard and so meaningful for me. Like I just don't want to be someone who stands in the way of that for someone else. And so, but either way, for me, and I've always felt this way. I felt this way as a Christian. I was on the space of like, well, I believe that as a Christian, I was like, I believe that homosexuality is a sin, and God doesn't permit marriage except for by a man and a woman and so forth.
Yeah.
And I was like, but anybody else can do what you want. If you're not a Christian, like do what you want to do. Like I'm not going to hold you to Christian standards.
Yeah.
But the issue that I kept running into, and the issue I still run into now, is how people want to be advocates for LGBTQ rights while still holding to the infallibility and inerrancy of Scripture. And to me, that is a huge cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think the only way you get away with it as a Christian is to deny that all the biblical authors knew what they was talking about.
Yeah.
Like I don't see any way around it. Like I hear so many arguments of people trying to make it seem as if the Bible is okay with, well, it's always this like exegetical gymnastics that make it seem as if, well, he wasn't talking about the type of gay marriage we're talking about now. He was talking about rape and blah, blah, blah. I was like, nah, I mean, fam, just read. If you just read from Genesis to Revelation, whether it's Jesus or whether it's in Exodus, if it's Leviticus, whoever, like people say, well, that was in Leviticus. Do y'all wear multiple fabrics, okay? Do y'all still eat shellfish? Like, fam, Jesus upholds Leviticus. He was an Old Testament Jew. The Jesus you're trying to uphold, that Jesus loves everybody. He loves everybody, and he loves Leviticus.
Yeah. Matthew 19. Between a man and a woman.
Yes, he upholds Levitical. So it's like you've got to make a choice. That's where it was always trippy to me, where it was like, I don't see how you hold the two without. You have to do some crazy gymnastics.
And when you say rights, you're not talking about like the right to work, the right to live. You're talking about the right to marry.
Correct.
Because there's yeah,
exactly. So, I just, people try to, when you're trying to have a consistent worldview, you have to think through those things. And I think that, I remember, man, this one lady, I was watching this debate. I think it was, I forget his name now. It'll hit me after this interview. But it was this sort of debate. Esau
McCullough.
Yeah. I think it was him.
Professor at Wheaton.
Yeah. So he was on this.
Yeah.
He had a conversation. He had like a panel about homosexuality and Paul or whatever. And there was a lady, I forget her name now, but I thought she was, because I was like, okay, here we're about to have Christians debating about whether, he was on the conservative side and he had some people who was more on the liberal side. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, let me see how they're going to make sense of this. How they're going to try to do all this. Somebody else doing the gymnastics again. Yeah. And she was honest. She was like, Paul got it wrong on his sexual ethic. Like, she was okay with doing away with the inerrancy and infallibility of all 66 books of the Bible. And I think that, I feel like that's the only the way to make it work. But that's kind of like a sidebar. But to say that, like, I was in working through my own consistency within my own worldview, that was something that was up for grabs. And I went to my pastor about that too. I remember going to his office and saying, "Man, I just want to let you know, like, I don't think I'm on the whole inerrancy of Scripture thing anymore. But it's not because I'm trying to leave the faith. I'm trying to create more space to stay here, because I don't want anything to get in the way of me just wanting to be with Jesus. Like, so that was my attempt, man. Yeah.
And it's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the reasons why I don't want this conversation to be a debate, or why I'm never in your comment section, is because I know you've got people that love Jesus and love you in your life that are better thinkers than those in the comment section, better theologians, right? And that's not to take shots at anybody on the internet, but and that's something I've truly respected about you, is you surround yourself with people that think like you and that don't think like you. You welcome challenge, and as long as you're in a trusted space, you're willing to have dialogue. And I don't know if people on the internet know that you're in your pastor's office saying, this is my wrestle, this is my tension. I think sometimes people can look at you and think, oh, he just made that decision in isolation. He's just rebelling, doing his own thing.
Nah, man, anybody who's been in small group with me, anything that's news to y'all now, people have heard that for weeks and months or years in my own, like, I was wrestling. My first time I really, wrestled with, I don't know if I was in small group. I remember a few years ago. I talked about this on my channel too one time. I forget on what video, but it was like, I was doubting the resurrection of Jesus. And I confessed to that small group. I'm like, yo, for the past 2 weeks, I've just been like struggling with this, blah, 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 blah. And so I've never none of my decisions have ever been in isolation from people, have never been, closed off from pushback or encouragement, or from community, from discipleship. People are like, oh, he just wasn't being discipled. I was like, fam, I literally lived with my disciples. Yeah. Like I literally lived in Chicago with one of my disciples. And I've always been, for the majority of my adult life, I've been close to my pastors. Like I was in Houston, then I moved to Chicago, then I moved to Atlanta. In all three of those cities, I walked pretty closely with, really closely, more closely than most with their pastors, and none of my pastors were unaware of where I was at.
So this is, it might get to the crux of it, maybe not, but you haven't done this in isolation. You've been trying to be as transparent as possible on your new YouTube page. And I asked you this in private last time.
Which means you can't ask me now.
You can't.
No, I'm playing. Go ahead.
So when I hear your content, and even the reason why I want to ask is I kind of hear it even in this conversation. You talk about people think, oh, it's an emotional decision, it's an intellectual, philosophical, theological decision why he left. But when I hear you talk, it's all the above. It's not one specific thing.
Yeah.
One. And I think what I had asked you is like, what did you need, or what do you need from God to say, man, this is it. This is the way of life. Because like even you giving up some of these things, the infallibility of Scripture, some might look at that and be like, oh, that's where you went wrong. But to your point, like you did that to preserve as much Jesus as you possibly could. People can debate like if that was the best approach or not, but the heart posture was. Yeah,
because I've literally seen people walk away from the faith because they were struggling with whether or not Genesis, the creation account, happened in 6 days. Yeah. And I was like, were you going to give up your entire faith for an issue that's not even, in my mind, directly related to whether or not Jesus is the true Savior? So I was like, that's when I was like, no, don't. And I was in the same vein. I was like, don't give up the entire thing because you're wrestling with whether or not this was a 6-day creation or if it was literal or whatever. It was like, no. Like, so that's my reasoning behind it.
Yeah, seriously. Like the heart behind was like, how can I hold on as much as possible? And so I guess what I wanted to ask, or what I'm trying to ask, is what were you looking for that you didn't find when it came to the faith? And I know that's such a big question. Yeah. We're not going to solve it with you answering this one time, or with the YouTube page that you started. It's an attempt to answer that question, right? But
it's a very feeble attempt. But yeah.
But like, what would, if you can sum it up, I don't even know if that's possible, but like, what were you missing that you felt like needed to be there?
For some people, they're like, oh, he never had a genuine experience with God. And then some people was, you're looking to have all the answers. I never looked to have all the answers. And I never was really, honestly, some people shun wanting to have an experience. Like, oh, you think God is always, in the existential rather than just faith. And you're like Thomas, who needs him to come up and show his hands or whatever. And I was like, that'd be nice. Who wouldn't want that? Like, why would you shun that? Like, if you could see a miracle and have an unexplainable moment, and to be honest, maybe I can think through and explain them a little differently now, but I've had moments. I've had deeply existential experiences as a Christian, so there's never void of that. I was following those feelings, but I was also following, just trying to be scriptural and trying to follow the Bible. And so I think it was just, I think maybe I lacked continuity of those experiences and connected dots. I think that for me, the more I wanted to learn about Christianity, and I see a lot of people do this. In order for me to learn more about Christianity, I ran the risk of learning other stuff that was threatening to my Christian faith. And so if you want to learn more about Christianity, and if it's true or not, you got to watch these debates and stuff like that. And you get introduced to all these other like
schools of thought.
Yeah. In trying to become a better Christian, you also kind of like, you got to bump up against some other thoughts as well, which is a scary thing.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to do both. I was trying to learn about those other things without learning too much to the point that it would like damage my faith fatally. And so it just became increasingly difficult to be an avid learner and be genuinely open and honest about what I may receive, you know, because I started to realize a lot of the stuff that, you know, oftentimes what Christians will do, myself included, is we'll allow a pastor to lift up, or even an apologist or whatever, a book to lift up an opposing thought, and they'll say, see, this is what Nietzsche says, or this is what evolutionary biologists say, or this is what, you know, whoever says. Yeah. And I learn oftentimes it's rarely been an accurate representation of what opposing thoughts were. And I'm experiencing that even now, the way people approach me, like because I'm not oftentimes I'm not in the traditional, what their pastors or what they know, the sort of cliche ways of thinking about people who have left the faith or who are outside of the faith. They don't know how to really deal with the nuances, which I don't blame them. I mean, like, nuances are messy and it's too much to do. Everyone's so different, and so it's like, you know, we categorize things all the time, and it's for us to save time. You know, you sat on that sofa today. You've never sat. Well, technically, you have sat on the sofa before, but let's just say this is your first time at my house. You sat on that. You've never sat on this sofa before, but you've sat on a lot of sofas. Yeah. And if every time you come to sit on the sofa, you have to like judge whether or not it's a sofa you can sit on. Yeah. Is it hot? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Is my butt gonna burn off if I sit on this sofa? Like that's a wild assumption to make. It's like, well, I see it, and generally it looks like a sofa, so I can sit on it. Like you've categorized because you've sat on other sofas. Yeah. And so we kind of do that with people. It's like, oh, I've ran into somebody like him, so in general he's this. Like, but he could be very different.
That's so real.
Real. But it's more efficient to just be like, oh, I've sat on sofas before, so this is just another sofa. Yeah. You know, so I've just learned that, you know, as I started exploring, you know, for one example, I had a poem about this too called Astrophobia. I was like genuinely had a fear and uneasiness about outer space. Yeah. Namely because I didn't know what that would mean about my faith. Like I just didn't like learning about what scientists thought about outer space. Cause I'm like, the only way I've seen people really deal with it is like, oh, them scientists don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. I had a discussion with one of my friends, who, you know, and I remember he asked me something. It wasn't even like, we weren't even having a debate yet. Just, we were talking about something, and I was like, yo, here's a cool thing about outer space. You know that, like, you know, the universe is, 14 billion years old. Yeah. And the Earth is about, I think it's about 4 billion years old. And then he was like, wait, like, well, how do you know that? I was like, well, I mean, it's kind of like accepted thought among like there's literally like no scientist, no cosmologist or astrophysicist who believes otherwise. Maybe it's, you know, some mild debate on, you know, give or take a couple 100,000 years or whatever, but for the most part, it's billions of years old. Yeah. And the only real like response that Christians can have is like, oh, we don't know. New Christian, you know, science changes all the time. Yeah, it's like, I find it so disingenuous because we trust the experts in apologetics and theology, that when they say, well, you know, these manuscripts we have are this years old, and they're this close to the life or death of Jesus, and then we have this archaeological find and all that. You didn't go see them archaeological finds yourself. You wouldn't even know how to test it. You know, you wouldn't know how to test for the age of some artifact or whatever. You trust the experts.
Right.
But that's what humans do. We have like we trust the experts oftentimes, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But so we do it with our theologians. We do it when the pastor tells us something like, you know, so we learn this about when we're doing exegetical studies and stuff. We learn the historical context of something, and we read in some book that says, well, this was the custom in Israel at the time, or this was the custom in Rome at the time. We're like, yep, that's true. You don't know that. You didn't. you didn't go, but you just trust the expert. So when I tell you that, I'm like, yo, all the experts say that the universe is 14 billion years old. You're like, well, see, science changes all the time. We don't know. It's like, it's a good insulator to keep you away from dealing with what's really out there. And so I was afraid of stepping across that insulation, and I eventually more and more I did it. Like, I think it just became, that was just another way of it becoming increasingly difficult to reconcile. Again, I let go of, I even know as I accepted that the universe is billions of years old, I started trying to reconcile, okay, what does that mean about a literal sixth day? I read The Science of God by, I think Gerald Schroeder, I think his name, I forget what his last name is, Jewish guy. And he makes a really cool, and scratch my itchy science mind. He makes a really cool argument in that book that, you ever seen Interstellar?
No, I have not.
Oh, you got to watch Interstellar, bro. Golly, it's so good. But it deals with time dilation.
Yeah.
And essentially, Einstein, literally a genius. I during the pandemic, I really dove down the Einstein rabbit hole, and I was like, oh, that's why he's really that dude.
Yeah. Slept a lot, right?
Huh?
He slept 3-4 hours a day or something like that, right?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I watched some little thing on him. Yeah.
Well, he so he comes up with the theory of general relativity, and within that theory also explains how in places where gravity is much stronger, it can warp space and time.
Yeah.
And we warp space and time everywhere we go. You sitting in this couch actually warp space and time. The way that you see how you warp my couch, when I sit in this chair and I warp this chair, there's an indentation. Yeah. That's how a planet sits in a grid of space and time. It warps stuff around it. Yeah. That's how gravity works. And so, around a supermassive black hole, space and time is warped dramatically, where in the movie, it shows how and this is actually true, that in certain places in the universe, for me, here on Earth, it would be 40 years. Yeah. But around that black hole, time slows down so much. 40 years to me would be literally 3 hours for somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I forgot where I was going with this.
You were afraid of even engaging in all of this.
Yeah, I'm afraid of engaging this. So I'm afraid of engaging with this stuff. And Schroeder, general relativity and 6-day creation. That's where I was on.
Yeah.
So essentially what he was saying is that, his argument, I believe he was saying that, one, time works very differently in different parts of the universe. And when he says that God created, light, let there be light, let there be darkness, he's creating the universe, and not necessarily, there's time that can pass between the universe being created and the actual Earth being created. And then you have universe time, and then you have local Earth time, and universe time could very well be billions of years, and to a particular point in the universe, it could be 6 days, and somewhere else it could be millions of years, and it's actually a really good, it's a really good argument. He has a whole chart and everything. It's actually a really good argument to how you can kind of hold in tandem the idea that the universe is billions of years old, and yet there is a literal 6-day creation. Right. But 6 days can mean, it can literally be a 24-hour universe day, I think he was saying, but yet it's millions of years. And it was a really interesting read. But I was just really afraid of really running into these if the universe is really this massive, and if there's other things that how do I make sense of I can go down so many rabbit holes right here now, but just essentially like it was one of those things as I start to read from other people and start to lose that fear of reading and learning from people whose main objective is not to prove for or against some religious thought. They're just there to show what's out there in the universe, what's true about our Earth's history and human history and so forth. And that was one of the, like, I won't say nail in the coffins, but it just definitely became more increasingly as I started to wrestle with evolution and how that makes sense of, like, I believe in evolution now, and I know that's like a cardinal sin for a lot of people to believe, because you can't make, like, if you have evolution, you can't believe in a literal Adam and Eve. Ask the Beast by Elizabeth something, I forget her name. She's a Christian, liberal Christian. There's a book that I read. Maybe I shouldn't be suggesting books that were on my way out. Like, but this was me trying to grasp. This was me trying to hold on to what I had. And I was like, maybe evolution is true, but how do I reconcile that with my faith? So I'm like reading Christians who are pro-evolution, but also pro-Jesus. And that was actually a really good book.
Okay.
It was interesting how she proposed the idea. I think we praise the idea that a God would have special creation where it's like he, snaps his fingers or says a word and everything's there, versus he creates something like a single cell organism that could actually grow into so many other things that, depending on how you look at it, can be far more impressive. Like, wow, that you create something that could create something. We see it in women. We see it in women. Like, yes, God, we believe that, God is, I believe that God is involved in the inception of a child and so forth, and it is God who gives life or whatever. But really, the woman, in one sense, is doing it all on her own. Like, she's inseminated, and this sort of natural process happens, and y'all say that is the work of God. But really, it is a work of both, where a woman creates life and so does God. And so she makes this argument of like, well, that is what the earth has been doing. God has endowed nature with the ability to create nature, and that doesn't take away from his majesticness. If anything, it might add to his glory. So
and it might like reflect his nature. That's how he
creates that which creates.
And that's how he designed us. He didn't give us a condo. He gave us raw materials, and with that, we build, and that as we're building, as we're creating music, as we're, building houses, as we're building a case in law, whatever it is, we're in my opinion, we're reflecting the creator, right? So that wouldn't be so far-fetched.
It wouldn't be too, the only like the real big issue probably would be the fact that now you have to wrestle with the idea that, well, evolution is heavily predicated on the fact that on violence. Like, you don't have evolution without is survival of the fittest, and something has to die, and how you get us is through massive death. And it's like, well, how does God? So that's a whole other thing. But anyways, I don't know if that answers the question, but just some more kind of a behind the curtains of my thoughts on that. So
as you're talking, you're kind of showing us some of the things you shared initially, that you're borrowing Christian language to make sense of life.
Not even borrowing, I own it. Let me just say that.
Go ahead.
Because I think people are like, you borrow from the Christian worldview, or you're borrowing Christian language, or even borrowing Christian culture. Somebody got mad at me that I made like a funny gospel song about hours and hours by Money Long. I'm like, I'm not borrowing. I'm black church. I'm church. I'm Christian. Like, I'm not religiously Christian, but I am culturally, like, you don't take that from me. Like, this is, I don't borrow it.
You grew up.
This is mine. You can't take it from me. Victory is mine. Victory of the day is mine.
Which leads to something I wanted to ask is like, do you miss parts of the faith? If so, what? Right? Because you grew up in it. You are culturally Christian. That's you see it in the songs that you make. I got the privilege of watching you perform last night. You see elements of faith in the way you deliver some of the messages, and some of the ways that you sing, the chord progressions, different things like that. You see church culture. You see Christian language throughout. And so, do you miss the faith? If so, what parts of it do you miss? What are some of the things that I've always wanted to ask you, do you ever get tempted to go to a church service on Sunday just because maybe you don't believe everything that's going on. But
Oh, I
you
almost
just
went like
miss.
3 weeks ago.
Wow.
Maybe like a month ago. I literally almost went.
Okay.
I was like, just for the,
Just to be in that
just
space.
to have the ritual of going somewhere with a mass of people.
Yeah.
I think that's a very human thing to want to collect. That's why people go to like sporting events.
Yeah.
We're very communal, and we need a narrative that joins us all together, and sports provides that as well, which is why it rivals religion. You always hear about pastors talking about, you have your sports guides, and y'all want to get out of church early because the football game is on, because it provides a lot of the similar things that church provides, is community and something to rally around.
Right.
And victory and losses and narrative and story and collectiveness, all is
It's right there.
it's right there. So it's the reason why it competes.
Yeah.
It even has not to be sacrilegious, but a mascot, like a Jesus, and it's someone that they all look to. And this is we rally around the Falcon, we rally around the whatever,
Viking,
or our superstar player.
Yeah.
As our sort of savior that we go behind, and
all want a hero.
he is the one who embodies. He looks a lot like us, but he has these supernatural talents like a Steph Curry who can shoot threes and hit all. But he looks like us. So there's like this duality of like he's 100% man, this sort of hypostatic union. You know what I'm saying? He's 100% man, but also something what we could never be like.
Yeah.
And that's why we rally behind him. So sports offers that, but I do miss a lot of the rituals. I think and as a spiritual, I am, even to believe in evolution, I believe that we evolved. Like there's not one human society that's ever not came up with some form of deity to worship. Like there's never been a society in that has ever arose and they just never ever believed in a deity. And I think from an evolutionary standpoint, there's probably a lot of benefit to that. Though it's another story. I don't think that, I know a lot of Christians will argue to me that without religion you can't have morality, but I would argue that actually morality predates religion. Religion is a further fleshing out of our moral standards and how we get along as people and living in society with others. It's just a more intelligent and more complicated version of very simplistic morality. And so from that means that the same way that I got all the genes from people before me that made them sexual and hungry and black and tall or brown eyes or all these genetic details, part of that genetic detail is that I'm a deeply spiritual being, whether I want to be or not. I believe that everyone is deeply spiritual, at least has a longing to be deeply spiritual. Of course, I know the Christian response to that would be, but I don't agree with your explanation for it, but I do agree with the fact that yes, we are all spiritual. And so with that comes a desire to want to commune around other people who like-mindedness. And so I miss being able to have Christians have a sort of ready-made community. Like if you ever want to have people who are older and younger than you and the same age as you, and families and single people and people who are in business and people who are teachers and people who are, you want a diversity of community and you want people who are rally around the same thing. Church is there. You want to go somewhere where you can naturally meet a marrying mate, someone you can marry. Just go to the church. Once you leave that, then now it's like, well, where do you go? Some people, it's the reason why dating apps are such on the rise. It's like, as you leave those enclaves, where do you go to naturally meet people? By naturally, I don't mean going to the club and randomly seeing somebody that you've never seen before, but rather through the church, you see the same people over and over again. You just have this sort of natural bonding with people. And it's just easier to get to know people in that way and to build genuine relationships. And so you want that. And I was missing that for a while in LA. I'm getting it again now. Instead of going to church, I ended up going to yoga. I did a video about that, the definition, Paul's, ethic of the body and all that. That was actually the time that I was considering going to church. I ended up, last minute, somebody invited me to do yoga in the park, and it was a very cool experience to be around a bunch of black people who were like-minded, who were all doing the same. Just like in worship, we all raise our hands together. We all sit down together. We all stand up together. We're all doing the same yoga poses together. And we're, you know, kind of all on the same mind. And then, you know, you can go there, you can hang out before and talk to people and meet new people, do the thing together. And afterwards you hang out like after church and just kind of chopping it up.
Yeah.
You get to see the same people over and over again. You see a pretty girl, maybe you'll see her there again next week. And, you know, you get to see her in the context of other people. So it's a bit safer and a bit more natural to meet her and so forth. And, you know, she can see you in a regular space and outside of having to, you know, go to the club and buy her a drink or whatever, you just kind of naturally meet her. So, all of that's like, that was present there and it was really cool. But I do miss that. I don't say I miss gospel music because I still sing it sometimes. It comes up in me. I love the melodies of Fred Hammond or Kurt Franklin or whoever, and like I still sing these songs that resonate with me. I have a song that I'm coming out with. It has a choir on it, and it's like it just feels so churchy. It literally is churchy. I'll let you hear it after this podcast. Yeah. And you know, it's who I am, and so I'm trying to find ways to reconnect with those things in a way that's obviously doesn't have to be now I'm a Christian, but I don't want to avoid it. I thought about going to church. I don't know if I could. I think it would bother me. I think in trying to get the things that I want from it, it would still bother me too much to see what I see as sort of antics, or especially in LA, but just, you know, stuff that I think are great for human flourishing, but also subtly not good for human flourishing.
Do you miss, like, sorry, this is really specific.
No,
like worshiping with people? Because
I never really liked CCM anyway. You know, I wasn't much of a. Maybe that was the that could be the dead on like clue right there. Like, well, he wasn't a worshiper. There you go.
Or would you go to a Kirk Franklin
I didn't
concert?
like the monotony of it. I didn't like the contrivedness of it. Like, I think people in church, like, I could love worship, but it was that we tried to milk it so much every week that we tried to make every single week be this super mystical big thing that it was like, after a while, it was like you kind of pumping it, like you're just trying to get those emotions that only come every now and then, and it just becomes a lot. And I think I was over that of, like, you know. And some people may argue, well, you know, God shouldn't have to pump and prime you to be excited about him. I was like, but so y'all just love, maybe some of y'all do, but y'all just love worshiping every single, I mean, like, exciting. I just like, not just you there. I'm talking about like no phone in your hand. You just like crying, this height of emotion, like you just loving it, versus maybe just love the communion of being around and hearing people sing the same thing, which I think is why people love concerts, because honestly, you know, you can just listen to Kendrick, you know, on your phone, but you go with a bunch of other people who also love Kendrick. And when he turns his mic off and he points to the crowd or whatever, and you all hear him saying the same thing together, I think that's a very powerful thing. I think that has a lot of usefulness to get people on board. I think that's one of the reasons why, another conversation, why music evolved actually was, what was the necessity of music in human societies was to get people all on the same page, predictable melodies that get people on the same. So anyways,
it's good. No,
I don't miss worship settings. I do miss genuine intimate moments, though. There's been a lot of moments in my life where I've had some very genuine intimate worship moments within myself, by myself, or with other Christians with a guitar or something, and you can tell it was like not being forced. It was just it was sweet and it was genuine, and they didn't come all the time. They didn't have to come all the time, but when they did, it was beautiful.
There's actually one cover of a worship song that felt that way for me that you did. I'm forgetting the name. Na, 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 na.
I was an orphan lost at the fall.
Bro, the amount of times I had that song play.
But Jesus, you make me see. You predestined to adopt me as your own. Yeah. And now I'm landing here in salvation. I am born again by grace and grace alone. Yeah.
What a time.
It's good melodies.
Yeah.
It's good, a lot of,
Well, I wanted to, something I hope what people are gathering from our conversation is we're just listening, getting a sense for where you're at. And I'm genuinely, I feel like we can have a million more of these conversations.
Absolutely.
I just love hearing your perspective and I feel like we lost the art of listening.
Yeah.
We listen to respond, right? It's like, okay, Joe said this. And it can be offensive because, to your point that you were making earlier, we want to oversimplify you and put you in a box. Mm-hmm. You said something that sounded like that person. Let me just put them together and say, this is who Joe is, or this is why Joe walked away. But it takes time, man. Like in my opinion, the human soul is complex. And you said nuance is messy. I couldn't agree with you anymore. There's just so much to an individual. And for me, I just want to learn and things of that nature. But I did want to give you an opportunity. We talked about off air how you're in the public light. And so, you get the best and the worst of people's responses. But truth be told, there's a lot of people in my life, and I know for anybody who's tuning in, there might be people in their life that are either deconstructing, walking away, or have walked away altogether. And I can't speak for everybody, but I know there are some people that genuinely want to love those people well. What did you have that you appreciated in your transition, and what do you wish you had in your transition? Like, how could people love on people like you better? Because I think you represent. Even last night we were talking about the concert and running into people that are on the same journey as you. Yeah. It's a thing. Like, there's a lot of people in the same predicament, in the same boat. Even for me, like as a pastor, I have learned the very hard way that part of the reason why I'm not tempted to just like have rebuttals is because I've tried that and it doesn't work, fam. And especially with someone like you who's thought very deeply about some of the things that you think about and some of the decisions that you've made. Like, you're an avid reader. Like, that's something I've always appreciated about you, whether you're a Christian or not. You're a curious individual, and you don't just do this haphazardly. There's a lot of thought, intention, meditation, conversation that goes behind some of the things that you do. And so I've just learned the hard way, like, one prayer is not going to do it. A conversation isn't going to do it. A debate isn't going to do it. Man, God, if he is real, if he wants us, he'll make that plain to us, right? And so I have personally in my own life taken the pressure off of myself to convert people or to make people think the way I think, especially as it pertains to the faith. I just think it's such a, with your background, you probably know where I'm coming from, such a supernatural thing. For me, like, conversion is, or whatever, it's a work of God or what have you. And so I'm rambling now, but what would be your advice to people like me who actually do love and care for people that are in the similar predicament as yours or in the similar season that you're in? What have you enjoyed? What has worked? What has hurt? And what have you maybe been disappointed about?
Yeah, what's been helpful is, and I'm not here to tell you. It could be kind of hard, as a non-Christian, telling a non-Christian what they should be doing, what their ethics should be. Yeah. I'll just tell you, what was helpful and what when I saw people prioritize their love for me over being right or me being wrong. They just, my parents, they were disappointed when I walked away from the faith, and they were kind of on some, like, they were frustrated. But then when I got the backlash publicly at first, and they saw how much it was hurtful, man. I'm not gonna go into, but it was hurtful. It doesn't hurt as much now, but at the time, it was hurtful, and I was on the phone with my mom, just crying, and I know it sounds kind of juvenile that we're crying about the opinions of people online, but it's true. But people don't, like, we're real people too. Like, I don't care who they try to be, like, I don't care about the opinions of people, blah, blah, blah. We're people, we're deeply communal. I don't care who you are, I don't care. Like, it affects you at some point, whether it makes you mad or it hurts your feelings. And oftentimes making you mad is just a version of it hurting your feelings. It's just expressed as anger. But, you know, when you've given so much time and energy to that world, and to see backlash from it and people trying to discredit you as a person, it's hurtful. And my mom switched modes, man. She switched into mom mode. Whereas at the end of the day, like, I don't know if you God's son, but you my son. And that's taking precedent right now. And I just, she was there to comfort me. And I really appreciated how my mom and my parents responded in that moment. And the way that others responded in that moment, some of my, you know, friends like Ezekiel and John O, and some other people that reached out. Andy Mineo was like, man, he got on the phone with me, talked to me for like an hour. And Andy's just a really good dude. I thought I was just featuring on a song with him. He reached out to me. I thought he was just wanting me to do a song with him or whatever, but just ended up being one of my favorite humans. And man, just a really, him and his manager, Dell, just genuinely good people, man. Just caring people. And so I think that's help. I think it's just a healthy and helpful ethic to have in general. Like, cause you're right. You're like, you're not finna just, at this point, it's not gonna be anything that's gonna convince me, not no debate or whatever. And I think the same way, like for me, like I be wishing people saw it the way I saw it.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I wish I would free ourselves from that. Like I see the problems of it. I wish, but I'm also like, I know how much this means to people. I'm not gonna try to beat nobody over the head. I'm gonna say how I feel, and you can do it. But I'm not gonna. It's, you know, me being unloving to you and judgmental and combative is not. It's not gonna do nothing.
Right.
It's literally not. And that's what always confused me when people like want me to come back to the faith, but they come at me, you know, on some like, well, you see how you feel, you know, when you're facing the judgment of God, blah, blah, blah. And they think that that's like their duty to say that. I said, but you really think that's what's going to, if your goal is to make me upset then or annoy me or whatever, then you, mission accomplished. But if your mission is to, you think that you want me to see the love of God and you want me to see things your way, like, you failed miserably.
Yeah.
So what is your end goal? Is it genuinely that you want me to see Jesus, or is it that you want me to see that I'm wrong? And the two are not the same.
Wow.
And some people conflate them as the same. And so if you conflate them as the same, where you prioritize making sure when someone knows they're wrong, then keep on with that mission. But to me, it just seems fake. It doesn't seem like you really you want people to see the beauty of Jesus. It's not convincing to me. And on my side, you know, I'm also like, you know, I'm not trying to make a case for secularism or anti-Christianity or whatever it may be. Like, I love where I'm at right now. And I think a lot of people would benefit where I'm at, but I'm not going to try to, like, if you'll listen to me, I'll talk, but I'm not going to try to debate you into, especially because I feel like, you know, a lot of people get into, I know I'm kind of sidebarring, but a lot of people get into apologetics and stuff, and they get really into it because they have their own doubts, and I could be projecting, but I do believe that some of the people who are so fervent about their defense of Christian faith is because they are struggling with it themselves. And to sort of prove it to themselves, they go harder in the public when as they're arguing with people who disagree with them, they're sort of arguing against themselves. And I found myself in that space. I'm not arguing with myself these days no more. Like I am like, I really am good where I'm at. So like, I don't feel no need to prove myself to nobody. I think the only thing I'm still wrestling with proving is like proving that like I ain't no dummy. And you think I know what I'm talking about. Like stop playing me, bro. You know. But And maybe there's some work I still need to do. But like, as far as like trying to prove that like where I'm at is right or whatever, or like I'm really good where I'm at.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel no pressure to try to like, and that's what I'm saying. If you really own what you own, then you wouldn't feel no pressure either. You would just, you be like, man, I own it. I own what I'm on. I know I'm 10 toes where I'm at.
Yeah.
And if you really about that, then you wouldn't be feeling this need to like go at people's heads like that, because you just know truth is truth.
Yeah.
But I know some people, they got the Great Commission call or whatever. So that make things a little more complicated. But I own what I'm on, fully. I'm not renting or leasing nothing. I own this. So ain't nothing going like really shake that for me at this point. So I feel like why shouldn't Christians have that same sort of stance?
That's real. I actually remember our last podcast episode we did together. You shared the same sentiment. Own your truth. You weren't afraid to own what you believed then. You're not afraid to own what you believe now. And I agree. The last couple of years have gone through my own traumatic experiences with the church and the lack of love. And it's made me wonder, if this is what we champion, why don't we see much of it, right? And especially like one of my favorite passages is in Romans. It's the kindness of God that leads us to repentance. It's not the judgment of God that leads us to repentance. Like, Peter, there's this one specific story where Peter is on the boat trying to catch fish all night and doesn't catch anything. Jesus comes into the picture. He says, throw your net on the other side. The net starts breaking. The boat starts going down, and his immediate response is, get away from me, I'm a sinner. And I always found it ironic that it was God blessing Peter that actually led Peter to repentance. It wasn't a sermon on why you need to repent. It wasn't, Jesus didn't pull up and say, I condemn your business. You should be following me. You're following worthless idol, whatever it is. He's just, you're a businessman, let me bless it. And then that was enough for Peter to, and so I've myself, like on this side of it, have been confused as well by the lack of love. I think like if we really care about somebody, if we really love somebody, we would be very careful in how we speak to them. We'd be gentle. Not to continue to throw like Bible verses, but I remember Paul, when he planted the church of Thessalonica, he said, we cared for them and nurtured them like a mother does with her baby. And I'm like, wow, like that's the way he served people. It was with genuine care. And even the way Jesus responds to people, we never talk about this enough in the world of apologetics, but he said it would say that he would look at their heart before responding to what they were saying. So he was essentially responding to the heart behind what was being said, not necessarily what was being said. And I think we've lost that. And you can't do that on social media. You can't do that on YouTube. Like, we can't look at your videos and get your heart and then respond. And so that's why for me, I think it's like a losing battle to like be in the comment section, right? It's a losing battle to pull up on your live and it's just.
Look, I told this guy, I said, I said something in a comment or whatever, and somebody was like, can you provide your sources and blah 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 blah. And I said, I could, honestly, bro.
Would that matter?
When this, I wish people would really think about this as y'all go hard for Jesus in the comment sections. When have you ever literally ever convince someone in a comment section or where they were like, you know what, all right, how do I accept Jesus? When have you ever, what, I'm wrong about my entire life, let me give up homosexuality and follow Jesus? When have you ever done it in a comment section? I'm not saying it never happens in real life, but when have you ever had that experience for yourself that you was like, I went hard, and they changed their mind. No one changes their minds in there. No. If they're flat out blatantly proven wrong, they either double down or just exit. They don't actually like sit there and humble themselves. No one ever.
No one. Yeah, that's right.
No one ever is like, you know what, man, maybe on smaller things, but never on massive issues. Like maybe like, you know, I was wrong. You know, you're right, bro, about a fact about something or whatever.
Right.
No one's ever went from Republican to Democrat.
Never.
No one's ever went from atheist to Christian or Christian to atheist. No one's ever went from straight to gay or gay to straight.
Yeah.
No one has ever done that in the comment section. So why are we like going ham in the comment sections,
Yeah.
bro?
It means it makes no sense. Yeah.
We just so
Yeah.
and that's word to myself too, because I was just going at it with this dude in my channel about, because I just had the hope that maybe he seemed like he was open to being, but it was a
It was a losing battle.
yeah. I was like, oh, he just doubled down. I was like, yeah, why are you not? I was like, Joe, no one changes their mind. You never change your mind, and they don't either. So why do this? Why do this?
It's real. We're all trying to be better at that. Listen, man, we can continue with the heavy stuff for another, you know, every time we hang out, it's like 3-4 hours straight of stuff like this. But I do want to get to music because I'm just a fan of your music.
Dope.
And, bro, last night, I thoroughly
fun times. This camera's getting
myself.
dark, I think, because it's darker. I don't know.
It's getting dark outside.
Yeah, this one looks okay. This one is like a little. Maybe we can fix it in post. It's also kind of moody too. I don't know.
It is.
Maybe it lets people into the world of like, oh, it's getting dark where he's at. Music, yeah, man.
Music. I want to know like what you have. You have music coming out. Are you doing a tour? What's inspiring your music nowadays? What's going on?
Sex,
there?
drugs, and money.
I knew it, y'all.
Sex, drugs, and money.
We got the exclusive. Y'all were right.
That's all I want to make music about. Yeah, man. I went through a really grueling creative process of trying to transition of what I want to say to this new audience, and I'm so thankful to finally be creating some music that I'm really, really happy about, and because I'm creative health is so predicated upon your personal health, and so as I've gotten better as a person, it's showing up in the way that I express myself in music. So I'm excited about finding my sound and being authentic to myself creatively. I spent too much time not putting out music, so this year is like I'm trying to flood. I'm not even trying to think about it, bro. I'm just pressing submit. So we've already got stuff in the pipeline that's already been submitted, about to start releasing, shooting music videos and stuff, and just not being scared anymore, bro. And just like, bro, it's either now or never. You gotta make it happen. So I'm excited about doing that. I'm excited about finding my voice in that space, exploring things that I wouldn't explore before, as far as like gospel sounds that I didn't want to be wrapped up in gospel. As a Christian, I didn't want to be in the gospel music world. I just didn't like it. So now it's like I feel even more free to like be true to those spaces of me, and just like, if it comes out as gospel in this space, like run it. Like that's you, like that's your influences.
I know you did a song with Andy. Would you continue collaborating with Christians with your art, or
nah?
Okay.
Andy's a special one because I still hadn't I wouldn't even fully transitioned out. Even that song came out, I think that song came out after I made the announcement.
Right after, yeah.
It was like right after, and I bet Andy was like, oh, perfect timing, right, bro?
Run the numbers.
But we had recorded that song, like, I did that probably months. Like, I think I recorded that in 2020.
Okay.
And it came out in like mid 2021. So it was, a lot had happened since that song had been made.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just don't even want to be in that. I don't even want no confusion of being in that world anymore. I don't even want people to think that, oh, is he coming back, or is it, or even the debate around should he be working with non-Christian artists, and I just don't even like what converses in that world. I'm good. I'll have my Christian friends, but creatively, like, I just don't even really want to exist at all in that world.
I get that. Yeah. I hear rumors that you've got a Drake feature.
I wish.
Is that?
No, it's not true. Though, the ask is coming, though. I just got to have a lot of music that I'm really proud of and making my own wave, and then you start asking those big asks, because if I DM Drake right now, he'd see it. I don't know if he'd respond,
but he would see it.
but he'd see it. So the access is there. I just need to give him reason to respond. So that comes with making your own waves first in your original music, and then you can try to be like, hey, yo, because he is open to working with new. I've seen him.
Yeah.
He get on some people's songs you ain't never heard of before.
Right, that's right.
And they blow up. Summer Walker was one of them. Giveon.
Yeah.
I'm just like, who the frick is Giveon?
Yeah.
Then, he had a feature with Drake before he ever had an album.
Right, and now he's Giveon. Yeah.
It's Giveon.
Yeah.
So it's not unreasonable.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's not unreasonable either. So
I'm here for it. I'm waiting for it. We never got a chance to talk about this in this podcast episode, but narrative is important. We all subscribe to a narrative. What would you say is, and you alluded to the fact that the healthier you are as a person, the healthier art becomes. Have you figured out your narrative in your artistry?
I'm still figuring it out. I think that's all. It's an ongoing. It's kind of like, my narrative is like a Walking Dead series, bro. That mug just never ends. Always some. If you go, it finally ended. I was like, man, this mug is still on. It's just just constantly being tweaked and added on. And my current narrative of being a creative is someone who trusts himself. I think you have to be able to. I think one of the biggest blocks for creativity is the lack of trusting that what is good. And I think trusting yourself when you hear something good and trusting yourself when you know something ain't hitting.
Yeah.
Like, don't lie to yourself and say this is hard. You got to be able to get it. Like, no, what's good. You've heard, good music.
Yeah.
And so when you make bad music, and you just got to be honest with yourself on that. And I think I'm learning being someone who trusts himself creatively, and I'm seeing my creativity more and more as like, I make art, like it's just what I do, versus like trying to wait for this big song to come or waiting for the big inspiration. It's just like, make art because that's what you do. Just make it every day, whether it's good or not. Like, people who are construction workers, they go and that's what they do every day. They're not waiting for inspiration to do. They just, I wake up at this time and I show up at work. Yeah. And I make construction. Yeah. Yeah. And same thing as an artist, it's like whatever you do. Like, I wake up in the morning, I do my thing, whatever, and I make art. Yeah. That's just what I do. I'm not waiting for some sort of inspiration.
That's real. That reminds me, John O, he talks about, I think John O is one of the greatest storytellers ever. He's just,
yeah, he is.
He's an artist. That guy. Yeah. But he talks about how every day he writes an illustration. Yep. And, it's like, how do you get so good at conveying a message? Well, like, to your point,
reps
every day.
Steph Curry doesn't shoot when he's inspired.
Yeah.
He just shoots and shoots and shoots and shoots and shoots and shoots.
Yeah.
That's why
he's the greatest.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
He's made more threes, but he's probably missed way more threes than most people too.
Right. That's right. But you just keep,
because of how many shots he's put up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's real. That's awesome. Well, I'm excited for new music. You've submitted a whole bunch, so hopefully this year we'll see some stuff come out.
Oh, hopefully it's
coming.
Should the Lord tarry his coming, it's coming.
I'm here. My only request is that you don't skip Minneapolis when you go on tour. That's my only request.
We can make it happen. You got to help make it happen.
Let me know. We'll make it happen. For sure. Man, it was a joy to have you on this podcast. Do you have any last thoughts before you wrap this up? Anything on your heart that you want to get out?
Nah, praise to you, man, for what you're doing and, teaching people how to be good listeners. And I think one huge mark of humility is being able to listen and inquire, and you exemplify that really well.
Man, I appreciate that, bro. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you trusting this platform and you being transparent and vulnerable with sharing where you're at. I know that's not easy, especially with the backlash that you've already received. And so thank you for being open and honest and being willing to have the tough conversations. And so,
yeah, man.
Yeah. I always leave better after talking to you, and this conversation is no different. So thank you for your presence, your wisdom, and your perspectives. Thank you, audience and listeners, for tuning in. Until next time, family, peace. And
Peace.
grace.
Grace and peace.
Like touching the meal, like this ain't clout. This isn't real life. I got a real life. Price is better and it ain't no doubt. I ain't got time to debate. There's countries to save. Afghanistan, Cuba, I pray.